Hello, in this video we're going to be focusing on section 1.1.4 Principles of Training. Now this is part one of a two-part video series where we'll look at the first part of the principles. So in this video we're going to look at identifying the key principles of training. I'd like you to know what each principle means, and by the end of it hopefully you'll be able to apply some of these principles in a sporting context. So these are the principles of training listed here. There's a really good acronym called RIPS are FIT. They are rest and recovery, individual differences and needs, progressive overload, specificity, reversibility, frequency, intensity, time and type. And in today's video we are mainly going to focus on the ones which are circled there: rest and recovery, individual differences, needs, progressive overload and specificity. One really important thing that I'd like you to be aware of, it's a good exam tip, is making sure that you can actually spell specificity. Some students use specify, special, specific or even specification. To get the marks, if you're answering questions on this topic area, you must spell the word correctly. So, the first one, rest and recovery. Now on your sheet you should have space to write this down. I'd like you to do that now. Rest and recovery. Now rest is the period of time given to recovery, and recovery is the time required for the repair of damage to the body caused by training or competition. Now the human body it's a very clever thing. It reacts to hard training sessions by increasing its ability to cope with future punishing training sessions, and this is called adaptation. However, the body recovers and adaptation takes place whilst at rest. So rest and recovery are really important if you'd like to make improvements in your performance. Now here's a really good example of a very simple training program done Monday to Friday. Now someone training 5 times a week like this person here would probably train on 3 days. So as you can see, Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday they're doing weight training sessions. The weight training sessions are varying between upper body, lower body and core, but then on Thursday they have a rest day. Now the rest day is really important because that allows the body to adapt to the training that's just taken place. Then on the next 2 days they'll do 2 more training sessions, and as you can see on our one here on Friday and Saturday we've got a cardio session and a weight session, and then on Sunday there is another rest period which allows for recovery and allow your body to adapt and repair the damage that you've done to it. Now obviously doing this cycle over and over again, if this person was trying to improve cardiovascular fitness for instance, they'd be able to run for longer in the game. They might have improved their muscular strength and endurance through the weight training, which means they'd be able to hold off opponents, maybe throw the ball further. Our next principle of training is individual differences and needs, and the definition is up there now, and it's matching training to the requirements of an individual activity. So when planning any training program to improve performance, the individual needs of a performer need to be taken into account. Using someone else's training program, for instance, won't work because every athlete has different needs. For example, athletes starting out on a program with a very low level of fitness shouldn't follow really someone else's program who's been training for a long time. They may find this too difficult and give up, or they may even sustain injury. Now a really good example here is the first time marathon runners on the left hand side using an experienced marathon runner on the right hand side, their training program. Now the first time marathon runner, they wouldn't have the level of fitness required, they wouldn't have the experience, they might not even have the motivation to benefit from their training program, and they could potentially risk injury to themselves. Using individual needs within a training program, there are 3 main things that you need to consider. You need to consider the body build, so what shape you are. You need to think about the sport that you play and the position you play in that sport, because each position, as we'll find out further on in this video, require different skill sets. And then obviously you need to find out what your overall aims are. What is it you'd like to do and achieve? And that's really important that you reflect back on the fitness tests that we did earlier on, because that indicates the type of training that you might need to do to improve your performance. The next one is called progressive overload. Now, progressive overload means gradually increasing the amount of overload to gain fitness without risk of injury, and that's really important. Gradually increasing the overload so that fitness gains occur, but without risking injury. So overload describes when an athlete trains more than they normally do, going from 1 time a week to 2 times a week. This is the only way athletes can improve their fitness. They've got to do more. It's often mistaken for training too much or training too hard, but this is not correct. It means working at a higher range of intensity than the minimum required to improve fitness. What you're aiming to do is to work within your target zone. So, for instance, you're not going to work at the minimum threshold of training, but you're not going to work at the maximum level of training. You're going to work at just the right training threshold to bring about improvements. So, the principle of progressive overload, which is gradually increasing the amount of overload, is related to all areas of health-related exercise. For example, overload training for muscular strength may mean lifting a weight at 60 to 80% of your maximum effort, whereas muscular endurance might be lifting for 60 to 80% of your maximum repetitions. And on the screen now, you can see an example of a performer who has used progressive overload in their training sessions. So if you look at week 1, for instance, they're working out on the biceps and triceps on Monday. On week 2, the weights have stayed the same, but by week 3, they've gradually increased their weight to 3 kilograms from the 2 kilograms, and that is progressively overloading those muscles. Now, it's really important when you use progressive overload that you review and evaluate every 2 weeks. Overload can then gradually be increased and the program reviewed again after another 2 weeks. In this way, the training loads are gradually adjusted, and you're not going from 2 kilograms to 50 kilograms. So at this moment, I'd probably say pause the video and read what's on the screen to familiarize yourself with what progressive overload actually looks like in a training program. The next principle is specificity. Now, specificity means matching the training to the requirements of an activity. So, for instance, every sport has its own specialist needs, and an example here is of a diver and, again, the long-distance runner. They obviously train differently because there are different components of fitness that are required to perform at a high level in these activities. Specificity, for instance, in football, though, you can be really specific in football, might mean concentrating on cardiovascular fitness or speed for a central midfield player. And this enables the player to keep going for longer, while the second, improving their speed, helps them move quickly throughout the game. Goalkeepers, on the other hand, as you can see on the screen, they may train for improvements in agility or reaction time. And if you've ever seen coaches at football clubs, you'll see that they have specialised coaches for defenders, for the strikers, and obviously goalkeeping coaches for the goalkeepers. Again, the need for specificity is clear in a game such as rugby, where the players must be very fit and strong. However, the forwards need to train for strength when pushing in the scrum, while the backs need to be able to be fast and agile to get past defenders. And then our final one in today's video is reversibility. Now, reversibility isn't a principle of training that you want to have in your program, because reversibility means any adaptation that takes place as a result of training will be reversed when you stop training. And there are 2 reasons really why you may stop training, and the pictures sort of indicate that on the screen now. The first one is through injury, so you're not able to train through injury. And the second one is not training through illness, so you might have a cold, or you might have flu, or you might have a medical condition that prevents you from taking part. Now, obviously, reversibility happens to some people quicker than others. So some people keep their fitness for much longer than other performers. This may be related to how long they've taken to build up their fitness or how serious their illness or injury was. However, again, it's really important, anyone will lose fitness if they stop training, and this is what we class as reversibility. So in this video, we've had a very quick tour of the first couple of principles of training. Hopefully you've been able to identify those principles through this video. You've made a note of them on your worksheet. You should know what each principle means, and you should have written down on your worksheet the definitions. And then in the final column, you should have applied these principles in a sporting context. Now, if your sheet is still blank or empty, go back to the start of the video and watch it over again.